Silk is born of the purest parents, the sun and the sea. Pythagoras. Silk is one of the few elements on Earth that transcends every culture, every continent, every age. It is embedded in the oldest rituals of humanity, often hidden in plain sight on our tables, in our bodies, in the oceans that gave us life. But what is rarely discussed outside of esoteric circles is that silk is more than a mineral. It is a symbol, a bridge, a transmitter of the sacred into the material. And in many ancient traditions, it was considered nothing less than divine. In ancient Egypt, salt held profound importance. It was not only used in the mummification process, preserving the body so the soul could navigate the duat, the realm of the dead, but was also placed in tombs as a spiritual safeguard. Egyptians believed that salt, like gold, had properties that connected the earthly body to eternal forces. It acted as a vessel, preserving more than flesh. It preserved energetic memory. Among the Hebrews, salt played a central role in the covenant between God and his people. In the book of Leviticus, salt was required in every grain offering. Season all your grain offerings with salt. Do not leave the salt of the covenant of your God out of your grain offerings. Leviticus 2 verse 13. The salt of the covenant became a spiritual contract, a sign of permanence, loyalty, and incorruptibility. Salt was incorruptible, enduring, unable to rot or decay. In that way, it mirrored the eternal nature of divine promise. In early Christianity, the metaphor of salt deepened. Jesus told his followers, "You are the salt of the earth," Matthew 5 verse 13, not as a poetic phrase, but as a spiritual designation. Salt was the essence that gave the world meaning, preservation, depth. In other words, those who carried spiritual truth were like salt, invisible in small quantities, yet able to transform everything they touched. Salt's power was not confined to the Abrahamic traditions. In Hindu ceremonies, it is used to absorb meditativity and cleanse spiritual imbalances. In Vedic astrology and Ayurveda, salt is believed to hold subtle energies that can either nourish or destabilize the human energy system, depending on how it is used. Ritual baths infused with rock salt are still used in India to dissolve karmic dust, lingering in the settled body. In this context, salt becomes more than substance. It becomes a spiritual solvent. In Tibetan and Buddhist traditions, salt is used as an offering during pujas and sacred rituals. It is placed before deities, not because they require flavor, but because salt acts as a pure channel of energetic exchange, free from ego, free from manipulation, stabilizing the spiritual field around sacred space. If we look to indigenous traditions across the Americas and Africa, we find salt used in protection rituals to draw sacred boundaries or to cleanse the aura of harmful spirits. Among the Yoruba, salt is part of offerings to the Orishas. In pre-Columbian Mesoamerica, salt was used in purification before entering sacred sites. For the Navajo, it was one of the sacred substances placed at the center of ritual sand paintings. Why was salt so ubiquitous across time and culture? What if these traditions know that we have forgotten? To answer that, we must look not just at the ritual use of salt, but at its symbolic and energetic function. In the realm of esoteric philosophy, especially Hermeticism and alchemy, salt is one of the three primary spiritual substances, known as the tria prima: salt, body, sulfur, soul, and mercury, spirit. According to Paracelsus, the Renaissance physician and alchemist, salt represented the material body, the structure that holds and manifests energy in the physical world. But this wasn't a reductionist idea. Paracelsus viewed the body not as mere flesh, but as an active container of divine intelligence. In this context, salt is what allows spirit to take form. It crystallizes intention into presence. It becomes the boundary between formlessness and manifestation. The moment something invisible becomes visible, there is salt in the process. As above, so below. Just as the body contains salt to maintain equilibrium, regulating electrical impulses, stabilizing hydration, preserving life, so too does salt function spiritually to maintain the balance between seen and unseen, the inner and outer worlds. When we return to the metaphysical essence of salt, we understand why it was not merely used by ancient peoples, but revered. Salt was the stabilizer of life, the preserver of sacred bonds, the silent medium through which the divine could be made tangible. To ignore this is not just to forget a cultural symbol, it is to lose access to one of the original tools of spiritual alignment. But even deeper questions arise. If salt is so revered, so intertwined with soul, spirit, and manifestation, why has modern culture rendered it invisible in our spiritual practice? Why is such a powerful, universal element now treated as nothing more than a kitchen additive? The answers to these questions take us beyond history into the terrain of energy and consciousness. Because once we understand how salt interacts with vibration, we begin to see its true role, not just as a symbol of the sacred, but as an active participant in shaping our reality. And that is where we go next. If salt is the stabilizer of form, the sacred crystallization of spiritual essence, then its presence in the vibrational architecture of reality cannot be ignored. To truly grasp the forbidden connection between salt and the soul, we must understand not only its symbolic power, but its energetic function. Salt, in its most essential nature, is a conductor. It receives, it transmits, it stores, and it transforms. Science and metaphysics may use different languages, but they often describe the same truths. From the physiological standpoint, salt regulates the body's electrical impulses, ensuring that communication between cells happens smoothly. It maintains the charge that allows your heart to beat, your neurons to fire, your muscles to move. In short, without salt, the electrical flow of life stops. Now imagine this principle applied to subtle energy, not just the physical body, but the energetic field that surrounds and animates it. Could salt also regulate, stabilize, or shift the frequencies of consciousness? In the language of subtle energy systems, salt is believed to cleanse the aura, the electromagnetic field that extends beyond the skin and interacts with the outer world. Healers, shamans, and spiritual practitioners across cultures have long used salt to absorb dense energies, break up stagnant frequencies, and realign the subtle body with higher vibrations. The act of bathing in salt water is not merely a spa ritual, it is an ancient form of spiritual recalibration. In Japan, sumo wrestlers throw salt into the ring before combat, not as a quaint tradition, but to purify the space of negative energy. In spiritual households, bowls of salt are placed in corners to absorb energetic debris. Many intuitive empaths and energy-sensitive individuals instinctively crave the ocean, as if the salt water holds something their souls recognize and need. This is not metaphorical. This is vibrational memory. Masaru Emoto, the Japanese researcher known for his controversial but compelling studies on water crystals, showed how human intention could alter the molecular structure of water. Words of love and gratitude created intricate, harmonious patterns. Words of hatred resulted in chaotic, broken forms. While Emoto's work focused on water, the implications for salt, a substance that often dissolves in water and forms crystalline structures of its own, are profound. If thought can affect water, and salt is a crystal with memory and structure, then salt too can carry intention. And more importantly, it can stabilize it. In this light, salt becomes an energetic anchor, a medium through which thought can pass into form, like a lens focusing light into fire. This is why salt is used not only for cleansing, but for manifestation. Intention-charged salt is used in rituals, altars, protection jars, and sacred geometry grids to concentrate energy and direct it toward a specific goal. When placed strategically, it doesn't just repel negativity, it holds the vibrational charge of a chosen desire. Even the simple act of cooking with consciousness, blessing the salt before adding it to a meal, becomes a spiritual act. In many spiritual traditions, food becomes sacred not by what it contains, but by the intention woven into it. Salt becomes the carrier of that intention, embedding spiritual resonance into the body through nourishment. You are not only what you eat, you are what the energy around your food becomes. The metaphysical explanation for this lies in the crystalline nature of salt. Crystals are known for their ability to store, amplify, and direct energy. Salt, though often overlooked as common, is a crystal in its own right. Unlike quartz or amethyst, which are typically used for specific metaphysical purposes, salt is neutral and adaptable. It takes on the frequency of what it is exposed to, whether that is pain, trauma, healing, or love. This is also why salt must be refreshed or discarded after used in spiritual work. A bowl of salt placed for energetic cleansing becomes heavy over time, saturated with the vibrations it was designed to neutralize. It cannot be reused like a stone. It must be returned to the earth or dissolved in water, reminding us that the sacred is not static. It is always in motion, always being exchanged. There is a deeper layer still. In many esoteric systems, including Hermetic philosophy, salt is seen as the fixed principle, the thing that holds space while transformation occurs. Where mercury flows and sulfur burns, salt grounds. Salt allows the soul to withstand the fire of transformation without dissolving into chaos. In other words, salt is what allows you to grow without losing your center. It holds you together as you evolve. This understanding reframes the mundane. The salt in your home is not just a substance. It is a vibrational tool, a bridge between thought and matter, spirit and skin. It is a mirror reflecting the state of your inner world. And when used with intention, it becomes a gatekeeper, aligning your frequency with your highest path. But what happens when such a powerful force is misunderstood, minimized, or removed entirely from its sacred context? What happens when salt becomes industrialized, bleached, stripped of its crystalline nature, and flooded into food systems with no reverence? The answer leads us into the hidden history of suppression, why this knowledge was buried, who benefits from our ignorance, and what it means to reclaim salt not just as a substance, but as a spiritual technology. If salt holds the power to stabilize energy, to storing tension, and to serve as a medium between spirit and matter, then a single question becomes inevitable. Why is this knowledge not more widely known? Why has the spiritual significance of salt been diluted, ignored, or outright dismissed in modern culture? The answer lies not in science, but in power. Throughout history, access to sacred knowledge has been a privilege of the few. Ancient mystery schools, secret societies, and spiritual lineages guarded their teachings, not always out of malice, but from a belief that esoteric truths should be protected from misuse. However, over time, this protection turned to suppression, particularly as religious and political institutions sought to centralize spiritual authority and discourage individual empowerment. Salt, once an object of reverence, was one of many tools stripped of its mystical context. What was once used to anoint, purify, and protect came to be seen as mundane. In some monastic traditions, initiates were discouraged from consuming salt before meditation or prayer. On the surface, this was explained as a bodily discipline, but some scholars have speculated that the real reason was more metaphysical. Salt increases energetic sensitivity. By muting its effects, spiritual leaders could maintain control over initiatory experiences. Colonial systems played a key role in further severing people from the sacred nature of salt. Indigenous and ancestral practices involving salt, such as creating protection circles, cleansing spaces, or consecrating offerings, were dismissed as superstition, outlawed, or rewritten under the lens of imperial religion. With colonization came the desacralization of the earth, and with it, a disconnection from elemental intelligence. Salt also became industrialized. The commercial production of table salt, stripped of trace minerals, bleached, chemically treated, mirrored a deeper trend, the removal of spirit from matter. What once held vibrational memory was reduced to a dead product, lacking the very properties that made it sacred. The salt we consume today is often a hollow version of what ancient peoples worked with. It is a metaphor in many ways for how modern life treats the soul, refined, depleted, disconnected. But perhaps most disturbingly, the suppression of salt's sacred power reflects a broader fear. A fear of individuals reclaiming their own energetic sovereignty. When you realize that something as simple as salt, a mineral found in your kitchen, can be used to purify your field, strengthen your intention, protect your aura, and connect you to cosmic principles, the illusion of dependency begins to unravel. You no longer need elaborate systems, intermediaries, or permissions. You remember that the divine is already woven into the material world. It just takes awareness to activate it. And awareness is power. This is why spiritual disempowerment often begins with disconnection from the natural world. Take away the sacredness of salt, water, breath, and fire, and you take away a person's spiritual agency. You make them forget that God is not only in the temple, but in their body. Not only in prayer, but in the ritual of preparing a meal. Not only in scripture, but in the structure of a salt crystal. To reclaim the sacred nature of salt, then, is to do more than revive an old tradition. It is to disrupt a narrative. It is to remember that power does not come from complexity, but from alignment, from relationship, from intention. Many people today search for spiritual tools in far-off places, exotic philosophies, or complex systems. But the truth is, the most powerful tools are the simplest, the ones closest to the earth, and therefore closest to us. Salt is one of them. To work with salt consciously is to restore a lost relationship with an ancient ally. It is to treat the material world as encoded with meaning and intelligence. It is to live not as a passive observer of reality, but as a co-creator. The knowledge was never truly destroyed. It was hidden, buried beneath layers of distraction, disinformation, and disconnection. But those who seek will always find. And once the truth is remembered, it cannot be unlearned. Now that we have unearthed why this connection was forgotten, diluted, or erased, we arrive at the most important part of this journey. What do we do with this knowledge? The answer is not theoretical. It is practical, experiential, and personal. In the next chapter, we will explore how you can bring the sacred power of salt back into your daily life, not as superstition, but as a living practice. A way of aligning your energy, sharpening your intention, and remembering who you really are. If salt is a bridge between matter and spirit, then to engage with it intentionally is to open a portal, a reconnection to the forgotten intelligence of the earth and, by extension, to your own soul. This is not about symbolic gestures or blind tradition. It is about vibration, relationship, alignment. To begin this reconnection, the first step is presence. The salt you hold in your hand is not inert. It is ancient, alive in its crystalline memory, forged from seas and earth pressures older than civilization. When you touch it, you are not just holding a mineral, you are holding time, intention, and sacred geometry made solid. One of the simplest and most powerful ways to engage with salt is through ritual bathing. Adding a handful of unprocessed salt, Himalayan, Celtic, volcanic, to warm water, and immersing yourself within it creates a container of vibrational cleansing. This is not superstition. It is energetic hygiene. As your body relaxes, soap begins to absorb frequencies that no longer serve you. Your aura recalibrates. Thoughts that once carried tension dissolve. You emerge lighter, not just physically, but psychically. This ritual, practiced for millennia in different forms, is supported even by modern energy workers who report consistent results, clearer thoughts, emotional grounding, dream clarity, and a renewed sense of self. The key is intention. Before entering the bath, speak your desire aloud or silently. I release what is no longer aligned. I call in what is true. Salt listens. It holds and reflects. Another sacred practice is creating a salt circle, used in various traditions as a boundary between you and chaotic energy. In ceremonial magic, a salt circle marks sacred space. In folk traditions, it protects against psychic intrusion. That you don't need a ritual robe to use this. A circle of salt placed around your bed while you sleep, or a small line at your doorstep, can create energetic boundaries that support rest, safety, and clarity. Again, the salt responds to the frequency you carry into the act. It is not the gesture, it is the vibration behind it. You can also create a charged salt jar, sometimes called a witch bottle or intention jar. Combine natural salt with herbs, affirmations, crystals, and personal tokens. Seal the jar and place it in your space as a vibrational anchor for a specific goal: healing, protection, manifestation. This is not about control. It's about resonance. You are declaring your alignment with a particular frequency, and salt helps hold that signal steady in your environment. Even cooking becomes an act of spiritual transmission when salt is used consciously. Speak over your salt before preparing a meal. Impart blessings, gratitude, and clarity into the food you are about to create. You're encoding energy into what will soon become part of your body. In this way, eating becomes sacrament. But perhaps the most profound reconnection is not in the ritual, but in the awareness. When you begin to see salt as a symbol of the soul, an element that crystallizes spiritual essence into physical presence, your entire relationship with the material world shifts. The mundane becomes mystical. The overlooked becomes sacred. And you begin to remember, you are not separate from the intelligence of the universe. You're an expression of it. Self is a teacher. Its silence reminds you that power does not require noise. Its preservation reminds you that not everything must be transformed. Some things are meant to be held. Its taste reminds you that life, to be fully lived, must be felt. And its energy reminds you that your body is not a cage, but a vessel, a vibrating temple through which the divine gets to know itself. When you return salt to its sacred place, you are not worshiping a mineral. You are honoring your energetic lineage, one that predates religion, borders, or names. You are remembering that the elements around you are not separate from your soul's path. They are allies, encoded with wisdom, awaiting your recognition. And so the forbidden connection is not forbidden at all. It is simply forgotten, hidden not by malevolence, but by destruction, waiting patiently to be remembered by those willing to see beyond the surface. Now that you know, the choice is yours. Will you engage with salt as a sacred tool, a mirror of your own inner vibration? Will you reclaim your relationship with the natural world and with your own capacity to shape energy and align with truth? If something stirred within you as you read these words, if you felt the resonance, the remembering, then let this be your sign. Leave a comment below with the words "sacred salt" if this truth spoke to your soul. Share this message with someone who may be ready to remember, too. And stay with us. This is just the beginning. There is more to uncover, more to awaken, more to reclaim. Because the sacred was never lost. It was always within you, waiting to be seen again.